Welcome to Conversations With. My name is Shaley Hoogendoorn, and I live with bipolar 2 disorder. Sharing with others is healing, both individually and collectively. Sharing our stories will educate others, bring more understanding, shed more light, and smash more stigma. Our voices need to be heard. Our stories aren't over yet. This is bipolar. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to This is Bipolar Conversations With. I'm Shaley Hoogendoorn. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, a teacher, and a fierce mental health advocate, and I live with bipolar 2 disorder, and I'm so super pumped to have Hailey on here. She is going to tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does.
Thank you. Well, my name is Hailey Rose. I run a page both on TikTok and Instagram called Mind Over Mood. And I'm here just as an advocate for not just mental health, but specifically severe mental illness, because it's something that is not talked about very often, even among people in the mental health advocacy community. I am living with, I have a current diagnosis of schizoaffective bipolar type, which is essentially bipolar 1 with symptoms of schizophrenia. And I also have ADHD.
Bonus.
Bonus. And something called body dysmorphic disorder, which is not dysphoria, but where you just have parts of your body that you are, you struggle with a lot to a clinical degree. I'm here to kind of show that we're not monsters, we're not villains, we're not, someone from a horror movie, and we're not always the drama, but we're just normal people living with a health condition, and we are all around you, and it's probably good to treat us that way.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Best intro ever. Yes. I love it. I'm so excited too, because I follow Hailey on Instagram, so I see all her things, but I don't know her full story. So my favorite interviews are when I don't even know what they're going to say. So that's really exciting for me. Exactly. I'd love to start back. Hailey, when did you notice, was it childhood, teenage years? Did you notice that there was something going on, or did this start happening more in your 20s? Tell us about that.
Well, the ADHD is something, for example, that usually you find out when you're a little kid. And so basically my whole life, I felt very, very different in a lot of ways. And I didn't really fit in with other people. And especially when you're a kid, you can't really understand why you feel different, why you can't communicate with other kids, why they don't seem comfortable around you like they do around each other, things like that. And so I kind of grew up with that, and it made me feel kind of very almost aloof, like I didn't want to be around people anymore, because I was conditioned to assume that they wouldn't like me, or they wouldn't understand me, or I wasn't going to be their favorite person or whatever, and things like that. And then I didn't really realize what it was completely, but as a teenager I developed depression. And I got diagnosed with depression, and they gave me antidepressants, and those did not work. Yes. And nobody put together why. Even my psychiatrist, which is weird because it was a while ago, but it wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't so long ago that, and then I went through my college years, having these points where I felt extremely low, and my lows would last for months or even like over a year. You know what I mean? Like they would last for a long, long time. And but then I'd have these periods for weeks where I felt amazing, where I thought I was the best, where everything was coming at me, where I was accomplishing lots of stuff, where I didn't need sleep. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm just special because I don't need sleep, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe and all of a sudden, and I have drawings from like literally where I would draw myself in these big things saying I'm high on life. And I looked back and I'm like, I was manic, or at least hypomanic. I was either hypomanic or manic at those points, but I didn't know. And when I was and again, I was somebody who was always described as very intense. um, which I think a lot of, yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people with bipolar disorder have had that label. And again, nobody knew why. I'd have these big rage outbursts at people when I got pushed.
Yeah.
Um, and even at one point when I didn't get along with my mom's boyfriend when I had to still live at home when I was like 20 in my 20s. And he'd be yelling at me and I'd be yelling at him, and I could feel myself just going over the top with it. And I would be like foaming at the mouth, and I'd be like sitting there, and my mother would get in front of me and she'd be like, something is wrong with you. She'd just look at me and she'd be like, I mean that. She'd go, sweetheart, this is not normal. That's what she said. She said, this is not normal. And I was all like, yeah, screw you, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't have him at the house then, blah, like, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, it was really hard and stressful. And he wasn't exactly, mentally well either.
That's hard.
But yeah. But yeah, so I was given a diagnosis by a psychiatrist for bipolar disorder when I was about 19 or so,
When you were
19 or
19.
20,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
19 or 20. And I didn't believe him. I didn't take it seriously because I knew a couple of men who had bipolar disorder, bipolar 1. And it comes out, I think, a lot differently in men than it does in women on the whole. I think it's expressed differently. And they had a very aggressive version of bipolar disorder, and they were just always getting in trouble. One of them was always in jail. One of them had 3 kids by 3 different women and just was all over the place and everything. I thought, that's not me. I'm not like that. I'm a good, I don't go to jail or anything like that, and so I didn't believe it. And then when I was like 24 or so, 25, I got diagnosed again with bipolar disorder because I was going through depression. And I didn't take them seriously then either, because I thought that was BS. Because again, I wasn't like the people that I knew that had bipolar disorder. At least I didn't think I was. Because one of the other guy, not the one that had been going into jail, that was my friend's brother, but the other guy who had bipolar disorder was my stepdad as a kid for a long time. And he broke our family in a manic episode. And so that was really hard. And I can say something else about that in a bit. But then when I was 27, I had this day where I'd had a fine day, actually. And then an existential kind of crisis came down, and and this is a whole other part of this story, but basically I had the mother of all nervous breakdowns. For me, I went into this panic attack where I crumbled under the bed. I couldn't breathe. I was screaming. I had this vortex in front of me of all my life. Everything I ever loved was like mocking me. I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't breathe. It was just this horrible thing, and I couldn't stop crying. And then after that, I went for a year and a half where every day, I didn't go a single day almost without crying and or having a big panic attack.
Oh, friend.
And I was in, and it makes me cry to think about, but I was in the worst depression that I have ever experienced. And I hope it was a psychotic depression. It was a very psychotic depression. And I didn't really even know what that was at the time.
Yeah.
But they said, and I started like, these kind of voices, these mean voices would be talking to me in my head and like saying these things. And I was like all the time I was dissociating and like derealizing, which is basically a form of dissociation for people who don't know. Derealization is when you detach from reality around you and suddenly you don't feel you're a part of it anymore, which is very weird. And that dissociation can happen to me sometimes, where it feels like I've kind of slipped into this kind of 360 movie, like I put on a VR headset, and I had to act like I was okay for, around me. But I wasn't in those episodes, and so I thought, oh my God, I have schizophrenia. And so I went and got tested. And it's like every time I was in that psychiatrist's office, I collapsed in my chair, like over like my face and my knees. And I got kind of tested by their psychologists, and they said, well, you don't have schizophrenia, you have bipolar disorder. And I was like, oh, thank God. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh wait, that's not,
Yeah.
it's not a huge amount better. But I took them seriously at that point because
Yeah.
I didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
And
Desperate. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Question. Before you, I sounded like Dwight Schrute there.
Question. It's a cat say that all the time.
Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. When the two times that you said that you didn't take it serious, I'm just curious about in there. So when you weren't taking it serious, did you take the medication? Did you take medication, or were you just like, oh, thanks?
No, I refused to believe that was a
Okay.
thing. So
Okay.
I didn't have any medication whatsoever. I was like, no, they're stupid. And even my mom, because my mom knew only those other people that
Right.
had it. And she's all like, that's not you. That's not my baby. My baby's not broken like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know? So I was like, yeah,
Which
she's
is
right. I'm
exactly
fine.
why you're here to explain, like, there are extreme unmedicated versions, but there are a whole spectrum of bipolar, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And both of those men, by the way, were not medicated, or at least they weren't taking their medication and care seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Exactly. And what's seen on TV and all of those things. And I love that you brought up the differences because with it being Men's Mental Health Month, I was looking into all those things, but my brain doesn't remember facts. But I know that it talked about facts are
mine
hard.
remembers useless facts. So,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
a
yes.
lot of
Okay.
them.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Back to your, so you were having this year and a half of every day having these episodes of
every day.
wow.
And I thought there was no, the only reason I didn't take, the easy way out, is because I didn't want to do that to my mother, because I was the only good thing my mother has in her life in a lot of ways. That's what she always said. And I couldn't do that to my husband. My husband, he'd already had a lot of trauma in his life, and I didn't want to add to that. You know what I mean? But I got to a point where I almost resented them because they wouldn't let me die. I couldn't die. And that's all I wanted to do at that point.
Yeah,
It was
you just
dead.
wanted it to end.
I wanted it to be over because it's like I sat there and it was like, did you ever see the old Disney Alice in Wonderland, the cartoon?
Mm-hmm.
There's a point where she's walking through this random part of Wonderland alone, and she's supposed to be following this road, but then this like little broom creature meets up with her and is coming back in her direction and has swept away the whole path right in front of her. And then it looks at her, it hops around her, and it starts sweeping the path behind her too. So now she's just left in this little square.
Yes.
And that's how I felt.
Wow.
I was just in this little square. There was no going back. There was no going forward. There was just waiting. And I thought, well, what the hell's the point of that? I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. And it felt absolutely pointless. I felt like I was just waiting for my natural end. And I hated it.
That's so hard.
And it was, but you have a deterrent there, and that's really important. And that's why I try to say so many things to people, and it's hard to even say without crying, but it's like I try to say these kinds of things to people who are in that space because I know I have a long time of experience in that place, and I know, and it seems like it's a forever thing, and it's not.
Wow, that's so powerful, especially to the people listening. If you're in that square right now, we don't know how or when, but there is hope.
There is. And the thing that I always say too is it's all like, however, if you're in that space, however you think your life's going to go, if you stay, you're wrong.
True story.
However you think it's going to go, for better, for worse, you're wrong, because you don't know. I could never, ever, ever have predicted the way that my life has gone from any phase to another, ever. And it's all different, and it's all new. And I never thought these things. And so it's like, the life that you think you're leading is probably not the life you're leading. And when you are in a deep depression like that, you think that you're under the impression that your death is not going to have the impact that it is going to
Yeah,
have
exactly.
on everyone around you
I'm
and
just
the
an
people who aren't
inconvenience.
around
That's
you.
my thought. That's my
Exactly.
intrusive thought. You're an inconvenience. People would be better.
Right. You're a burden. You're just slowing everyone down. Like, oh,
Yeah.
they'll get over it, blah, but they're not going to get over it.
No.
They're not going to get over it. I promise you. I have people in my family who have lost people to suicide who I wasn't related to them directly at the time. And it's been decades or like years and years, and they're still not over it because they can't get over it, because you leave a hole. You transfer that grief to someone else. And while that grief might have ended for you, eventually it will never end for them. It will never end for them. And it's hard. And you get people saying, well, I've been waiting around. I know. I waited around a very, very long time, many times. I've spent years in that space. I've lost years of my life in that space. But the way you are seeing life now is with this big fun house mirror that you were surrounded with, and you are seeing this warped, crazy image of yourself. Yeah. You can't see the world outside of you. You see yourself in a fun house mirror, because you can't think of anything but yourself in your own life when you're depressed. And it's not because you're selfish. It's because that's just all depression lets you see, is this weird warped version of yourself and your life. And, there's a whole world out there that you're just being hidden from right now.
Wow. That's true. It's true. I saw this video, and usually sometimes if they're like too inspirational, I'm kind of sarcastic and make fun of them. But this video really got me because it was saying like, I don't know if it was just at a sensitive moment or what, but it was talking about like, there's so many of this, like, or like maybe, I don't know, sunsets, or there's so many people I haven't met, or there's so many, and it really got me. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to try and think about. Right. That's because I meet the coolest people, especially doing this job, right? Like we wouldn't have met each other and got to hang out.
Right. This is a cool moment that you would have missed. And that's the thing. It's always like people like, I hate when people just say, think of all that you'll miss, because when you're that depressed and everything sucks, you're like, that's the point. I want to miss it. I don't want to sit around for it. But that's what it says. It's like, no, you don't know what you're going to miss.
Yes.
But whatever it is, there's going to be some parts of it that are way worth it that you're going to miss out on. I promise you.
Yes. I think that's the way. I think that's why I make fun of, because I get really like toxic positivity activates me, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
Oh God, yeah, I can't stand that. Yeah.
But you got it just right. Yes. It's not like, it's not cheesy. It can be beautiful.
I think there's a whole need to learn for people who do get suicidal, how to understand what it really is. And then for people around them to learn how to talk to people who are suicidal, because there's a very specific way that you need to talk to people, who are suicidal, because you say certain things and it either doesn't mean anything or makes it worse, or, you act certain ways and it doesn't do anything. And, there's nothing that makes someone who's suicidal feel less heard than you showering toxic positivity on them.
Oh, so worse. They already feel so bad about yourself, right?
Right. Well, they're like, well, obviously you don't
if someone's listening right now, would they like go Google, like we have things, but they aren't specific to people that are suicidal, but we've got some episodes, words that help, words that hurt. We talk a lot about this, but can you think of a resource or anywhere that people could go? Where do you talk about that on your Instagram?
I do. I talk about it. So in fact, I just did a post recently that was a text post about it, but I want to do more, because there's and I've done several text posts on it.
Okay, cool.
And I can do that. And you do a Google search, and there's going to be all kinds of resources that say all kinds of different things. And I'm not saying that I'm 100% right all the time, because I'm definitely not, but from my own personal experiences with it, that I know there are certain parts that are universal. There's certain things that people need to understand about suicide. And even my family who has lost, parents and things to suicide, it's like they were always like, didn't understand it, didn't get it. And it's like, well, there's a perspective that's there that if you haven't been there, you don't really see. And it's a scary perspective, and it's a weird kind of pain. And sometimes it's a pain that hurts so much that you don't feel anything at all.
Yes.
It's a weird pain. In fact, the last time I had made an attempt, when it was in 2016, I didn't feel a whole lot at all. It was this numbness. It was this practical sense of, well, I guess it's over. There's no
Wow.
need to wait around. I guess we're done, and it was all like, there's no point staying, cheerio. And that was it. And that was also a psychotic depression, which I didn't realize at the time, but it was, and I was living alone, and that was
Oh,
not a good combo.
right.
But a lot of the time it's just that.
Yeah.
And people need to realize that too. And the other thing is, like, the way that I was going to do it in my head at the time didn't seem consequential. It just seemed like, okay, this is just going to be a way to just do it, not take it back, and it'll be
Yeah.
done, and everything like that. But looking back on it now, that chosen way would have been absolutely horrific for
Mm,
everyone I knew and for people I probably didn't know. And I could have hurt people that I didn't know physically. I could have hurt them. I
mm.
was going to jump off of a freeway overpass. What if
Wow.
I had landed on a car and they'd gotten in an accident? They did not want to be here. What
Yeah.
if a child had seen me? And now a child
Oh,
is scarred for life. What if anybody had seen me and been scarred for life? What about the police and people who would have to find me like that? What about my
mm,
mother who would have to have
mm.
identified me like that? Like, it's horrific. And you don't think about those kinds of things. That this never even occurred to me at the time,
Wow.
and because you don't think about it, because again, it doesn't let you see outside world. It makes you just see you and your world
Yeah.
in a really
It makes
warped and
everything
dark, horrible way.
small.
Yes, and warped and terrible, and
Yeah.
and that's what it does.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's one of those things where it's like, if you can just hold on just another day, just another hour, just another
Yeah.
minute, and just give it another minute, you can make that decision later, but you can't unmake it, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
unless you get a real big stroke of luck and someone helps you unmake it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought that up too, about like when I asked if some of it was on your page, because I think with the back to the Googling, that's why this is the whole reason why we started the podcast, is because you can listen to a gazillion therapist voices. And of course, as we should, they've studied
Mhm.
yada, yada. But if you aren't listening to lived experience, like we aren't textbooks, right? Like we're
Right.
not the same. You and I both have bipolar. I have bipolar 2 disorder, whatever that means. And, we're different, even
Right.
someone with the exact same diagnosis. And I think that we need to start I think the breaking stigma is listening to stories from actual lived
Yeah.
experience.
And it's interesting that you say that, because, a lot of the time I've gotten people who are therapists, who are psychologists, who are even training to be those kinds of things, who have followed my stuff and said, wow, it's interesting to hear this perspective of it. I wasn't aware of that. And I know I'm not
Exactly.
going to be the only page where somebody has said that, but it's interesting to have seen it on my page.
Mhm.
Because it's true, because it's a different experience. I make simulations sometimes of my
Mhm.
experiences, where, like, you can watch it and put your headphones in and kind of get an idea of what I experience, because I have a background in video production and stuff like that, so I can kind of do that a little bit. And I know a lot of psychologists and therapists actually found it really, really interesting, because the way that I
That's
experience
awesome.
certain things, particularly the schizophrenia symptoms, are different than the way that people with straight schizophrenia might experience them, or even other people with schizoaffective might experience them, and
Yeah.
things like that. And also it helps other people, I think, when you're watching a simulation like that, go, so I'm not a fraud,
Yeah.
because that's what it feels like for me too. And me, it helped me when I made that simulation. And so many other people were like, yes, that's it. That's how it feels. And I'm all like, okay, good. So it is a real thing. I don't feel like, it
Yeah.
helped me like, okay, so it is a real thing. All right, well, that's good to know, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's powerful. I would love if you could, for even just for me, because as I told you, I can't remember facts. Could you break down your different diagnoses and what that feels like or looks like? Just because, yeah, I'm just so curious. Like you talked about the different type of depression. Was it psychotic depression? Is that what you said?
it was this, yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Can you
had regular
explain
depression and
some
then
of that?
psychotic depression. Yeah.
Yeah, like the
So
difference and stuff.
absolutely. So when you, and I'm sure you're going to know some of it, obviously, but when you have bipolar disorder, you have your mood episodes, which I think actually could equally be addressed as energy episodes. You know,
100%.
it's your energy. Your energy affects your mood. right?
Mhm.
And so you have too much, too little, too, all that kind of thing. What your energy is being sucked up by, will change your mood and everything. There's having that kind of mood and energy episode. And then there's taking it a step further and it becoming so intense that you lose touch with reality in a big
Wow.
way, in a noticeable way. And people, like that's the difference. And no way am I minimizing it. I mean, I used to have a bipolar 2 diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is bipolar 2, you have hypomania, which is, a big up energy that, you have the racing thoughts. It's basically mania. But then with bipolar 1, you have just mania, which comes with more psychosis. And you hear the word psychosis and it sounds weird and freaky and like someone's got a knife and they're going to stab you. It's not what it is. Psychosis includes things like delusions, fixed beliefs, fixed false beliefs that you believe that are irrational. And even in the face of all the evidence that it is true, it is fake, you don't believe that. You could say, okay, yeah, it's not real, but inside you're like, yes, it is.
They're all
If you
lying.
have exactly, or they just don't get it. And then you have, you can have extreme paranoia. And you say paranoia, everybody gets paranoid, right? Like but then there's an extra paranoia that goes with the delusions. That's like irrational things like that, I remember just in my last standalone psychotic episode, I was so convinced that I was like a Neo from the Matrix kind of guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had proof that all of these things were fake, that they were put there on purpose and blah, blah. And every time I thought about it, and I'm all like, they know, they can see you. I would see somebody who would look at me and their eyes would turn black. Like those were the people who were watching. They were the ones that knew.
Yeah. And you could see it.
And I got paranoid. Yes. And I got paranoid and freaked out, and it was horrible. And there's a bug. But that can happen when you're manic. And if you're if you're dysphorically manic, it might be a more negative psychosis. You may also have hallucinations, audio hallucinations, visual hallucinations, and you may have negative symptoms, which I can talk about with a psychotic depression. But because I don't have a huge amount of negative symptoms when I'm manic, I have too much energy. And when you have positive and negative symptoms are things that add to your reality. So you're paranoid, you're delusional, you're hallucinating things that aren't there. You're you are having extra things that aren't there. Like I remember my last manic episode at the peak, I was just sitting there listening. I'd been listening to the same 4 songs on loop all night long and all day
life changing, right?
And I was just sitting there just in this weird like paralysis, just like giggling and listening to this stuff. And like I was sitting there with my vape and I was just like,
Really?
And then all of a sudden, and I was like itching, and all of a sudden I saw these big like violet smoky spiders like crawling up, the wall and everything. And I just looked at it, and my response was just like, okay, so this is what's happening now. Okay, great. Like I was just looking like, oh, okay, wow. Yeah. All right. Like that kind of thing. And it was just this big, like, kind of thing.
That's fascinating.
So that's the psychosis for me with mania. Right. And then if you have, you have depression, and a lot of people know what depression is, but you can have a psychotic depression. Psychotic depressions for me, like the delusions I'd get when I was manic and I was euphorically manic, were things like I literally thought I was God. Right. And it wasn't me being, narcissistic. It wasn't me being,
no, there's a
like,
difference.
Oh, I'm so important. No, I literally, my eyes are brown, the sky is blue, and I am the current manifestation of Buddha. That's it. You know what I mean? Like that was it. It was just a fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
well, I thought I was a matchmaker. Like I thought I was convinced about these 2 people in my complex. Luckily I knew one. I was convinced. It was the night before that I actually went into the hospital and got my final diagnosis, but I was convinced they needed to be together, and that was like my sole mission of
that you had some kind of powers or some kind of like divine knowledge or something. Yeah, that's incredibly common. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with mania, and you end up feeling dumb afterward, but you weren't dumb, like you were sick. You were just
like I sat her down and I was like, look, like this is your George in whatever to be. Like You
gotta
need to
do it,
do
man.
this.
You gotta do it. Like, yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, and it feels well. I remember I've got pages and pages of letters that I wrote my husband that I thought were direct letters from God. And I was sitting there printing it like typed out, single
Yeah.
space, 12 point.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, babe, God's been talking to me and he wants you to know this. He's blah, 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 blah. Like all this, he's excuse me. And he's like, he's a good sport. He's like, okay, honey. All right. Thank you. I'm going to
Yeah.
keep these and thank you. And, like that kind
I'll
of
take
thing,
this into
it's just,
consideration.
I'm going to put these in the spam. I'm going to put these on the fridge with a magnet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. And we
um,
can't, yeah, we can't help, and we know this is serious for those listening, but and you'll see on Hailey's page, and we'll probably talk about this in a bit, we have to laugh.
you have to laugh or you're going to die.
Exactly.
If I couldn't laugh, I'd be dead by now.
Yeah.
No, it's, and that kind of thing. Exactly. Oh, but so I was setting up that kind of psychosis and mania.
Yes,
And I
yes, yes,
should
yes.
have gone
Sorry.
to the
Yeah.
hospital, but I ended up having to go to the hospital anyway, but I should have gone way before I did. But we were scared because it was so expensive. You're
Oh
talking
yeah,
thousands of
it's so
dollars.
different in the States. Yeah, I'm in Canada.
You're talking thousands of dollars, and that's before any kind of ambulance ride. You don't take the ambulance unless you
because it
absolutely have
costs
to.
so all of
It could
that,
be
like, it
thousands of
isn't
dollars
covered. None of
it's the
it's
most expensive Uber you will ever have. It could be like
Oh,
$1,000, $2,000 to go from here to the 3 miles to the hospital. But yeah, so, and so we
terrible. That
didn't
makes me
go.
so mad.
I know it's just, it's ridiculous and it's dreadful. And there's things that are great about the, innovation that Americans have created in healthcare, the things that we've created, the things that we've built and everything. But the reward given to the citizens is dreadful.
Yeah.
There's very little, if any, reward. Yeah. But so, and I'm being ADHD about it, but if you're looking at a psychotic depression, right? So like I said, there are positive and negative symptoms of psychosis. The positive add to reality. The negative symptoms take away from reality, right?
Okay.
So that's when you dissociate. Things like, dissociating, where you suddenly feel like reality is leaving, or like you get a deeper form of dissociation called catatonia, having a catatonic episode, which would happen to me semi-regularly when I was depressed, where I would literally, I would collapse onto a chair or a bed and I could not move my body or speak for hours. Even if I had to go to the bathroom, even if I was dying of thirst, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I couldn't tell someone I needed to go to the bathroom, I couldn't ask for a drink of water, I couldn't do anything except kind of like the occasional like basically if your mouth is slightly open and you can, move your stomach to make noise, that's all I could do. And my brain was functioning normally. So I was very aware that this was happening.
Like, does that time go by very slowly?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it does. And it's, and it's hours. It's in, you can speak, but you're fully aware. And you're trying, like you might twitch a little bit, but that's all you can do. And, you get really waxy and everything. Another negative symptom is something called avolition, which is where you want to go do stuff, but your body just kind of says no. You're like, okay, I'm going to get up and do this now. And you try to go do it, but you just can't really, your body can't get motivated to go do it.
right.
And then there's another, oh gosh, I can't remember the name. It's another A, but it's basically the one that's more common with depression, where you don't have the mental motivation to do anything. You can't enjoy pleasure. Anhedonia, that's what it is. And you take it from hedonism.
I don't know this word.
It's like anhedonia. So it's like hedonism, but anhedonism. So hedonism is where you get all this pleasure and you want to do stuff and it's great. It's the opposite of that, where you can't feel any pleasure. You feel numb. You don't want to do stuff. So you get those two kind of mixed. You get something called thought blocking and speech blocking, where you'll be in the middle of saying something and all of a sudden it's completely gone. And that happens sometimes. People are all like, oh gosh, what was I saying? But like, you can't even speak anymore.
Yeah, it's different.
You're
I always
done.
try to explain that a lot of the things, because also we've normalized words to mean things that they don't mean, like we throw around depression or all these things when you don't have a clinical diagnosis. But I always try to explain, it's like to the nth degree. Like, yeah, you might experience a little bit of extra energy, but this is to the nth degree. Or you might feel a bit sad, but this is like not able to get off the floor. Like,
right.
So I hear
exactly.
Yeah. So
And
it's really hard to communicate to people. And that's why I'm always like, take back our words. Please don't use our words as adjectives. We
exactly.
don't have very many.
Exactly. And there's actually something about the term bipolar disorder that I want to say, if I can remember in just a minute, but it's like, as I always say this, it's all like, everybody has to pee sometimes, a lot of the time, hopefully.
True story.
But if you have to pee every 10 minutes, something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, I need to pee, I need to pee, I need to pee. It's when you need to do it all the time, you have a problem. That's a clinical issue. It's like, when you're happy and high energy, that's one thing. But when you are unable to sleep, you are on overdrive, and suddenly your decisions aren't really yours anymore, there's a problem. You know what I mean? Like, in that kind of thing. And so the thought blocking is just different.
Yeah. And the hard thing is, I thought, because, I was depressed, I thought that version of me, hypomanic version of me, was regular Shaley, right? So this was, which happens a lot, right? And you would get praised for it because it's like, look at all the things she's done.
Sparkly,
like, yeah, but
great.
I haven't slept for a week and have yelled at everybody, but I have this awesome new renovation.
Yeah, exactly. And you're sparkly and bubbly and you got this energy, at least in the beginning. And then that energy is a little too much for everyone. Yeah, no, it's, I caught myself saying something. Somebody said, what's with mania? And I said, well, with mania, I finally feel like a real person. And I was like, oh, that was interesting coming out of my mouth. I was like, I finally feel like a person. Because I don't feel like a person otherwise.
No, because you feel, but then you have to feel to the nth degree, right? And I think that's why so many people, and I think you even said it, we get diagnosed with depression first, right? And then
because it's more noticeable.
Yeah,
because it doesn't feel good. Yeah,
exactly. That's when you go get help. You're not going to get help until you have like a hypomanic crash, or you're too angry, or you've done something,
or you've done something that's just shot yourself in the foot. Where you shot yourself in the foot. Absolutely. And with this kind of thing, it's like, I knew that it was a depression, like a psychotic depression, because I had all these negative symptoms, right? But then on top of it, I did have the delusions and the extreme paranoia. I remember at one point, during the last big depression, when I was 27 or 28, I'm sorry, 28.
Numbers are hard.
Numbers are hard, especially when you've had quite a few of them at this point. When you're at, I was at 28, I remember I couldn't leave the house. Hardly ever. I was like a lion pacing a little cage. That's all I could do. And I was starting to get convinced that there was this demon that was watching me and following me. And it got to a point where I couldn't close the shower curtain when I was showering because I was afraid that it was going to be standing there when I opened it up. And I couldn't have the lights out. I couldn't, I drew pictures of it. Just, it was always behind me. It was always watching me. It was always, going to be there. And, it was terrifying. And I had this paranoia about it and everything. And then before that, again, with the one where I was numb in 2016, where I made my attempt, it was that I was living alone. So that was bad. And all I ever did was talk to people via text on the computer. And I was so alone and I was so depressed. I started thinking nobody else existed but me. Wow. I started thinking that all of these people were fake. And that I'd walk down the street and I'd see people, but nobody would really like talk to me because they're strangers. Why would they, And so I was convinced that I was living in this world where no one existed but me. And so I started freaking out, and it was this weird, like, psychological thing. And I should have known at that point that something was very, very wrong, but I just didn't. I thought, oh, I'm just depressed right now. Oh, whatever. It's fine. It's not fine. Yeah. It's not fine. If you're thinking stuff like that, it's not fine.
Yeah. If you're someone, tell someone.
If your thoughts start seeming weird, or you think to yourself, if I told this to someone, they wouldn't get it. Yeah. You need to talk to somebody about it, someone professional, because maybe it's something,
and I think it's worse. Like sometimes, it's like, but what about the stigma? And what about this? And I don't want that. And even though, of course I didn't want to be diagnosed with bipolar, but there was a teeny bit of freedom, right?
It was a teeny bit of relief. Yes.
Freedom and relief, because it's like, okay, it's something to explain it. And I feel less like it put me in a box, although people do that very nicely sometimes.
Right.
It felt more like, an explanation, right? So instead I
Yeah.
would always just be like, what's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? It's like, oh, and then to hear the power of there are other people out there, because you just,
Having the same experience.
it
Yeah.
is, it's
Well, and also too,
so,
it's like, okay, so not only is this not, just a character flaw, but there's something that can be done about it. There's a
yes,
way I can learn to manage it. There's
yes.
things I can look out for where I know that I can do something so that it doesn't get to this point anymore. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. I do know what you mean. It's interesting. Um, I thought about this when you were talking. I've been kind of wrestling with this idea because I never really thought of it before, because I've been like, somewhat like things are muted, right? Like I still
Mhm.
have episodes, but things are more muted since medication.
Yeah.
And but I was thinking about this idea of, someone said, oh yeah, that's a chronic illness, or that's incurable. And of course I knew that, but lately, like wrapping my head around that was really interesting, because it just showed like the self stigma, or the stigma that I still have, that I still sometimes think like, oh, it's something we can overcome. And I know that absolutely isn't true, right? Like
It's
that it
not.
isn't. And I think,
But that's not a bad thing. It's just, it is what it
no,
is. You
it
know what
is
I
what it
mean?
is. Yeah.
And it's fine. You got to live
And
with
once
it.
you get onto that, like I always feel so bad when people are like, when do you think I'll get off medication? And I want to be like, you know what? I started more of a like walking along a healing journey.
Mhm.
Once I was like, if I have to take this forever, I have to take it forever. It helps, right? Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
whole idea of it, we have this idea of like conquering or getting it over, or it's going to totally go away. And I think once you can,
You're fighting an ocean wave. It's going to keep coming. And,
yes,
and that's the thing. And
exactly.
actually, like, that's what I say. Like, if someone's asking, I had to learn how to deal with these massive panic attacks that I would have. And I know you probably had them too.
Yeah.
And it's like the one of the reasons they're so hard is a lot of people struggle against them.
Yes.
A lot of people sit there and they're like, this is not happening, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it is happening. And that's okay, because they happen. And it's like, I get to that point where it will knock the wind out of me.
Mm.
But, but, it's what started off as that big crumbling vortex, kind of panic attack, is now at a point where I just hear this, like, get this, like, kind of wrecking ball in my stomach, and I get numb and tingly, but emotionally, I'm kind of okay.
Yeah.
What I
Wow.
mean, because you learn how to manage these things when you know that they exist.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to open an umbrella when you see a big wave and hope that you don't get wet? Or are you just going to get on a surfboard and try and surf it back to the shore until it's done? Because that umbrella is
Oh,
not
that's
going to hold
so
up. I can
good.
tell you right now, like it's, you
Yeah.
sit there, you're not going to fight it,
Yeah.
just let it go and it'll be done. And,
Yeah.
it's what
Yeah.
it is.
The whole, I used to think like therapists were a little bit unhelpful when it would be like, feel your feelings. I'm like, don't you understand that that's what I've been trying
I
not to do
don't
my
want to
whole
feel my
life?
feelings. Oh my God, the amount of that's a huge reason that bipolar people struggle with sobriety, because it's all like, therapists will say, feel your feelings. Like, do you understand the feelings that I have? Because I don't want to feel these feelings. I'm always
There's too
feeling
many.
my feelings. There's too many and they're not rational and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, and then I overthink it. I'm like, am I feeling the right feeling at this right time? And then it feels like you
yes.
just,
Yes. It's like, is
what?
this feeling or is it that
Yeah.
feeling? Should I be
So
having this feeling?
yeah.
Like,
So I've kind
yeah,
of found
no.
it helpful, more helpful to like I I like the idea of more like stay in your body. Like that
Mhm.
idea, then feeling it,
That's
stay in your
exactly it.
body while it happens. And if you stay
Feel
in your
your
body,
body.
yeah,
Exactly. Feel what's going on in your body. I can tell you exactly what's physically happening during a panic attack, because that's what you focus on.
yeah,
And it's like, people don't realize, it's like, this is a scary experience, because not because of what's happening physically, but because of what's happening mentally. If you were to just suddenly start feeling the sensation of laughing,
yeah,
it would not be very comfortable.
no,
It's your stomach contracting to the point where you might
yeah,
even get hiccups and it might get sore and everything. But if you don't find anything funny, like, it's uncomfortable. The reason that laughter feels good is because you're enjoying yourself. If you suddenly feel the feeling of being on a roller coaster, it's terrifying. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, in a bad way. But if you're on the roller coaster and you like roller coasters,
yeah,
it's exciting.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's the same feeling. And then when you get a panic
Interesting.
attack, the
Yeah.
reason that this kind of numbing, tingling, I mean, I'm sorry, it's like when you take a recreational drug, you kind of feel that way too, but you're enjoying yourself. hopefully, but it's like, but this feeling, the physical sensations are neutral. If you can focus on those and let that happen and process what's happening there, then you're focusing on something neutral until it passes. And a lot of the time, it's not that these feelings are these emotions and thoughts are causing a physical sensation. This physical sensation is causing these emotions and thoughts after you get
Yes.
into it. There may be a
That's what I
trigger
think people
thought.
don't understand.
There may be a trigger thought, but the rest of it is that your brain is confused and thinking, well, I'm feeling this way. There must be a reason. Let's think of one. You know what I mean? And it does. And that you don't, no, there is no real reason except something went wrong in your brain. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. So then to tell me to just think positively, well, my body's still doing the thing.
That's not going to
Rainbow
work out.
sunshine, rainbow sunshine. Oh, guess what? I still feel the same.
Exactly. You're like, oh God, I've missed out on the rainbows and sunshine because I'm depressed. You know what I mean? Like it'll find a way to make it terrible. Or sentimental things will suddenly go very wrong,
Exactly.
But yeah, so you feel that, and it's something that you don't understand, I don't think, until you've really felt it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's
Mm-hmm.
true. Some of the public speaking that I did this one thing where I actually talked through a panic attack and like the thoughts, like my thoughts or whatever. And I remember that I felt ridiculous doing it, but I remember people were like, that was so helpful. They're like, holy cow, you think all of that in a matter of da, 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, they're like, whoa, right?
Yeah. And I think I've done something similar, but I couldn't find a video. Place somewhere on my page, somewhere in the 600 something posts, but it's helpful to kind of go through it. And and then it's like, if you have an overwhelming emotion and you can't get rid of that, don't fight it. Just let it come and go. Crying will end that feeling that you need to cry faster than not crying.
True.
Like and so it's like, that's kind of the feel your feelings. But I think especially when it's coming from someone who doesn't have a mood disorder, it's kind of like, you're like, no,
100%. Just like, no,
sorry, I don't know if I was supposed
thanks for coming out.
You're all like, no,
you don't get it. You don't get
it. Exactly.
So question for you, Hailey. I'm curious about, I don't know this. I don't know the answer to this. Were you ever hospitalized? Have you been hospitalized?
Yes. I've had to go to the hospital and I've had to go to crisis units before.
Okay.
Because again, the hospital is very expensive. And they did not, in the hospital, they didn't exactly know how to treat it because the only place that was available was a general hospital.
Okay.
And so they didn't really know what to do. They would just leave me in the room for hours. And I was sitting there just kind of like, giggling and kicking everything. I was manic. I was giggling. I was kicking everything. I was like smacking on the walls and just being like, my husband came and checked him. I'm like, what do you want to have for dinner, babe? Like, like that kind of thing. And he's all like, he has this look on his face like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? Let's get Chinese, like it was just, like it was bad. But, they ended up like, when I went in, I was psychotic and I was screaming at things and I was like, and being belligerent. And I ended up having to have the cops come and escort me to my room. And they're all like, okay, you can either be nice or essentially we're going to have to restrain you, or you can just chill out. And I was at least standing up and be like, I don't want to be that guy in a straight jacket. I'm just going to try and just feel like, oh, you know what I mean? Like just kind of keep it in, but it was almost there.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to, just like you're saying, like I try not to get bitter about it, but I feel like I would have gotten a because I was diagnosed really late. Like it was 2010, which is in my 30s, which I don't remember. I tell myself I'm going to remember the number every time and then I don't. But I was in my 30s before I got my diagnosis, which generally is pretty late, right? But I had gone into my doctor several times before that. And I actually even like my husband and I like looked like, we actually think I have this symptoms. Like, could I possibly be bipolar? And he was like, nah, you got it two together. And so even within the medical community, the more complicated or severe mental illnesses, I feel like they're not super understood. And my doctor's like delivering babies and doing all the other things. I'm not saying like, oh, my doctor sucks. It's just clearly.
No, they're very smart, but it's just a very different world that they're not properly trained in.
Yeah.
And even some of them that are, it's like the psychiatrists, I mean, I respect what you do if you're a psychiatrist and everything.
Yes.
But you spend 15 minutes with someone and then you give them a diagnosis, which, I guess you're qualified to do, but it's like, it's just happens so kind of fast and willy-nilly and stuff like that. And, you just don't have the time to really get to know that person.
And you have
I didn't realize that.
Do you have to wait there? Like, so yes, we have free healthcare here, but in Canada, but like you can be in crisis and it's like you have a 3 months, 4 month waiting list. I'm like,
Yes.
so that's why. So that's why I went to Emerge, because I didn't have, you don't have very many other choices here.
Right. That's the one thing that's the one thing that actually is better with healthcare in the States is, I mean, like my husband's from the UK, right?
Okay.
And they have the NHS, which I think operates fairly similarly as a socialized healthcare system. And he was on a waiting list for 2 years for mental health. And then when he got here, they were able, once he got his insurance and everything situated, they were able to see him in 2 weeks for a regular one. And if I had an emergency right now,
yeah,
I could probably call and get somebody to see me on video tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah. So
it's like there is bonus for
waiting.
free, but then honestly, because I very much acknowledge that I'm very privileged. A part of me is like, I would pay anything to, because we get a lot of messages, like you probably do, a lot of messages, and I, especially when it's from Canadians, I'm like, unfortunately, like you have to go to Emerge. You can't, like, don't wait. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I always put it like, it's like, I always say it like, in food service and hospitality, it's all like, if you are in a place where you have to heavily tip, you're spending more money, but you're going to get service where the people want to earn a tip. You know what I mean? Like if you're somewhere where hospitality doesn't get tipped, well, then they don't really have, they'll do what they need to do when they need to do it. You know what I mean? But it's like you saved money, but also you got service that you would get for saving money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so, there's that kind of thing. And also there's medications that I got here that I wouldn't have been able to get, in the UK or whatever. I don't know about Canada, but I know about the UK, and some stuff like that. But there's obviously there's that big aching hole in our flaw in our system that I think everyone's familiar with. But yeah, and it's sad, and there is still stigma and stuff here when it comes to stuff like that. Like I had a nurse practitioner for my psychiatrist that I would see when I couldn't see him, the actual psychiatrist. And he actually looked at me one day, and I was in the middle of a standalone psychotic episode, because, just an aside, the reason that I have the schizoaffective bipolar diagnosis is when you have bipolar 1 or with psychotic features or whatever, you will have psychosis while you are in a mood episode. But if you start also having psychosis when you are not in a mood episode, it comes up on its own. Then you have a schizoaffective disorder. If you have just psychosis without the mood episodes, then you have schizophrenia. So you have a little bit of both. You have schizoaffective disorder. And so I was in a standalone psychotic episode, and you can see it on my face. If I'm having, oh yeah, and it scares my husband, to be honest, because it's a scary face, because it looks like there's something really wrong with me.
Wow.
And I was sitting there with that face with him. Or no, I didn't have that face with him at the time, because I had just a little bit more kind of cognitive coherency, whatever. And he looked at me and he goes, well, you don't look like you have schizoaffective. He goes, you're too expressive. And I'm all like, what? Like, and I asked like a bunch of other people. I'm part of a schizoaffective support group where there's thousands and thousands, and all of them were so indignant. Like, I have facial expressions, blah, blah, blah. What do they mean? And I'm sorry, but when you have bipolar disorder, you have facial expressions. Like you do.
I have a lot of them.
Yes, because you feel a lot of things. It's like, you realize I still have that, right? Like, like it's not, and just to be told you don't look like you have
that's
something.
the worst.
Like, what does that
Please,
look
anybody
like?
listening, never say.
It's like, it's the same as saying you don't look gay, or you don't look, like you're, whoever, whatever, and it's just like, well, that doesn't have a look. It either it is or it isn't, it doesn't.
I hear you. And sometimes people think of that as like a compliment, right? And I'm like, no, it's not a compliment. And also you're diminishing my experience completely, and the experience of others, right?
Of others,
I don't know if it's like this human thing where we want to make a hierarchy of, that's why I hate things like high functioning. It makes it sound like you're trying to sound like, I know we don't have another words for it for some of the anxiety, but it makes it sound like better. It's like, no,
Right, right. Or less severe, like you're not suffering as much as
Yeah.
somebody else, which is also a thing.
Yes.
And I think within our own community, there's this thing that I call the suffering Olympics
Yes.
that some people play, where it's like, someone's describing their experience, and it's like somebody's got to chime in and be like, well, I'd trade places with you because this is mine. And you're like, okay,
Oh,
get
it's the
lost.
worst.
Like just stop. Like, there's certain people who always have to be the worst sufferer in the room. And let me tell
Your
you
heart
something.
is your heart, right? It
Exactly.
doesn't help
It's
to think other people have it
it's
worse.
relative.
Yeah.
It's
And not
relative.
that I'm not empathetic about
No,
other
of
people that have
course.
it worse, but it's still, my experience
There's
and
a
it's,
lack of empathy with people who play the suffering Olympics because they're not convinced that anyone's suffering like they are. And let me tell you, it's like two things. One, I go and visit a man who's in his 60s, who is in a permanent psychiatric living home, right? He's permanent inpatient. He has major schizophrenia and now has dementia because of all of the medications and all of the very draconian things that they made him, that they used to do to people with schizophrenia. Like he had to have those kinds of things and it messed with his
like in the
brain.
movies. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone more mentally ill than that man. So you can't
Oh,
sit there and tell me that you have the most of this symptom or whatever. And then on the second point, right, like I've described to you some pretty severe symptoms, right? Like, and they are scary, but I've gotten to a point where I'm used to them. And so when they come up, they're frustrating, they're distressing, they're
yeah.
upsetting, they can be scary, but I'm used to them. They are not rocking my world.
Right.
Right. Whereas there may be somebody else who comes up. I had a friend I was talking to just last night who was having his first ever panic attack. He was terrified, and he'd never had any of the major severe symptoms or whatever that like I go through or anything like that. But man, that panic attack knocked him on his butt.
Yeah.
And it's like looking at the two of us. Can you really tell who's suffering more? Can
Yeah.
you make that call?
Yeah.
Because I
Who are
can't.
we?
You know what
And
I
I'm
mean?
curious
Like,
if it's someone's own trauma, right? That you haven't been, I try and think of it like they clearly haven't been heard, right? If you're
yes,
trying
yes.
to push that on, and I try to see it through that trauma lens, but yeah, it's hard. I get it a lot because it's bipolar too. Well, that's not as bad. It's like, well,
I
I
hate
feel
that.
pretty bad.
I hate that. No, and it's dreadful because it's like, yeah, you don't get the full blown mania, but it's notorious for creating much deeper depressions than a lot of people with bipolar 1 experience. And again, yeah, you can't really define that. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that you pointed out trauma. I'm not gonna start going on a stereotype. I'm not gonna stigmatize a specific disorder, but there have been more people with a specific disorder. I'm not going to say which one that is, but it is trauma based, who continually play the suffering Olympics. Every time I see it, almost every time I see it, it's somebody with this particular disorder that actually is trauma based, around not being heard, around being diminished, around being devalued. And so it's interesting because those people are the ones that are chronically saying, we have the worst thing you can possibly have. They'll say it to the face of someone with schizophrenia and they just look at you and they're like, really? Like,
Yeah.
like, and so it's all like, and it,
Yeah.
but it is,
That's hard. It's hard. It gives you so much more compassion and empathy than when you start looking for, what's you're looking through things through a trauma lens. Listen, we're going to do a second episode. I
Absolutely.
have 5,000 more questions to ask Hailey. So if you're just tuning in, the next episode is going to come out really, really, really soon. So please,
Awesome.
please come back. Awesome.
Absolutely.
This is Bipolar. Thanks again for tuning in. You can find video versions of This is Bipolar on our YouTube channel. We also have all our previous and soon to be future episodes of the podcast on Apple, Podbean, Spotify, and Google Play. We spend most of our time on Instagram at this.is.bipolar. There is a vibrant community there where we have conversations and post different ideas and different strategies, and we'd just love for you to join us there. It is so helpful if you enjoy our work or think it would be helpful to someone if you could like and share and save and follow us in all or any of those spaces. If you're a listener for the podcast, if you could leave a review, we would be forever grateful. Again, thank you for being here with us. Let's get the word out. Let's share lived experiences so that we can change the ideas that people have about bipolar and help those of us that live with it feel less alone. This is bipolar.